All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. This is digital meteorologist David Nazario back in the Digital Weather Center, and we are talking what's left of our historic and I would say decadal winter storm. We're probably not going to get another storm like this in a very long time. And if we do, something could possibly be broken in Mother Nature, to tell you the truth. So thank you all so much for tuning in over on the News 6 Plus app, and to all of our viewers on the News 6 YouTube channel. We had a phenomenal turnout yesterday during some of our continued coverage of the winter storm event, especially for the Panhandle. Down in Central Florida, we got some much needed rain. Today's article over on clickorlando.com highlights that superbly, with Kissimmee taking the cake in terms of how much accumulated rainfall we had over the 48-hour period that encompassed when this winter storm got started and when it wrapped up as of around 8 o'clock this morning. So again, also, if you tuned in with us yesterday, we did mention that today would be a much better day as the sun gets started. We may have some lingering showers and drizzles out there for Central Florida. Those have since finally cleared out. We're welcoming in some of that Arctic dry air. It is going to be very cold. Very cold. And with that being said, let's get started. Let's rock into this. So the next big thing, we're done with the rain, we're done with the snow. Now it is going to be cold. So as I take you through some of our main weather headlines here, we'll go ahead and pull those up for you. As you can see, right now, Arctic air is pushing south. The winds are going to stay elevated as a result. Last night, it honestly harkened back to almost Hurricane Milton, to tell you the truth. I was at home. I believe it was 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I had just gotten back from News 6, and in my bathroom, as I was getting ready to jump in the shower, I could hear the wind and the rain just buffeting the roof of my house. That's how strong the wind gusts were. Some areas approaching 40 to 50 miles an hour overnight yesterday, which did result in some power outages. I can pull that graphic up here for you momentarily. By this weekend, the coldest air of the season could arrive. We're seeing Orlando dropping possibly into the low 30s as we start Saturday morning, and especially as we rock through the weekend with high temperatures barely squeaking up into the 50s, thanks to that Arctic air mass finally settling in full-fledged. And then what's ahead? Models do favor one last potential storm system before a warm-up. And I'll show you why it is I do think that as we close out the month of January and rock into February, right around my birthday, that's when things are finally going to kind of tone down a little bit, settle in a little bit, and we might actually warm up some if you reside somewhere in the southeast, here in Central Florida, and up the mid-Atlantic coast. I'll show you exactly why it is the pattern's going to be doing that. Here's a look outside using our water vapor satellite shot, and you can see just an enormous trough extending across the southeastern United States. Let me go ahead and bust out my favorite tool here. Let's get the pen out. Bam. So here's the base of your trough, your Arctic trough, right there, kind of drawing it in like a smiley face to highlight those shades of rust colors and the yellows here on the water vapor. This is our winter storm there. It is now fully stretched out, elongated. It is encapsulated by the jet stream winds that are screaming out of the southwest, ripping towards the northeast, which is why you can see it starts down at the base of the trough and runs all the way up through to the Atlantic Canada coast and then some. So this system is very heavily sheared. It is very elongated, kind of stretched out like a slinky or an accordion. And that's why a lot of us were seeing some continuous rainfall throughout yesterday, the day before yesterday. We saw the immense amounts of snowfall piling up in areas like Pensacola, Tallahassee, Panama City, other areas, local areas of the Panhandle, southern Alabama, southern Georgia, even Atlanta did get a dusting if you tune in from up there. I know that there were a lot of folks on my TikTok and other social media wondering if they would get another round of possible snow for Atlanta, and we thankfully nailed that forecast. That trough, the base of it here, is what's going to continue to slowly work its way off towards the east, planting the coldest temperatures associated with this feature overhead. And that's why our temps are going to continue to, believe it or not, drop, even though the system is now fully through our neck of the woods. I'll switch us over to the current radar, and you can see still some light showers out there, some very light stuff. But as you can see, especially if you're here in downtown Orlando, because of those fast-moving speeds in terms of our winds down at the surface, all the way up the atmosphere, Right at the very tail end of the loop, you can see here now, current time, all that rain is gone. And we are just about finished with the snowfall up there along the Carolina coast. Kind of still sticking around the Cape Hatteras area. Probably going to be the last to go before the jet stream can bully that winter system out into the Atlantic and pose no further threat or create any kind of weird weather phenomena for anybody out there. And then finally, if you look here, our latest graphic from Climate Prediction Center has us above normal. A huge transition. And you can see, actually, as a matter of fact, I'll take you full screen. Let's dissect this a little bit. Climate Prediction Center is in fact picking up on what I'm going to show you here in a moment. If you notice, we're looking at average temperatures through much of the eastern lower 48, with Florida finally getting back into those familiar shades of tan, yellow, and orange, and so on, which means warmth is coming. And then notice how we suddenly switch out here. We have now the blue shades over in western CONUS, the desert Southwest, the Four Corners states, Southern California. Hopefully they can finally get their wildfire situation under control with our next approaching system that will flip the pattern upside down. And again, I'll walk you through the science as to why I'm picking up what Climate Prediction Center is putting down. And this is exactly why. So looking at our upper level pattern here, this is where we can start to dissect what the long range outlook looks like. This makes sense. This is now currently this morning, Wednesday, January 22nd, and you can see that enormous Arctic trough is over top the central and eastern halves of the United States. And it is not fully done troughing down. If I fast forward just a little bit, notice as we go through Thursday, Friday, and into the weekend, now we have an extension of that Arctic trough right over us. I know it looks like the base of the trough is off to our west, but remember, cold air has stack. Cold air is a three-dimensional beast. It kind of has a slope like so. So if you have your trough centered to our west over the panhandle, parts of Alabama, Mississippi, that cold air stack is going to come down to the surface and reach us here in north central Florida. South Florida, you guys are living the dream right now. If there's anybody out there who wants to get in on some spring or some early summer action even, head on down to South Florida. I remember yesterday we had such an immense gradient over the state. Pensacola was down to what felt like 18 to 20 degrees once the snow really kicked in. Then, as you get into northern Florida, closer to Gainesville, Ocala, Marion County, Putnam County, Flagler County, we were sitting around the 40s and the 50s, Orlando in the upper 50s. And then if you were to continue further south, down near Fort Lauderdale and Miami, they were in the mid-70s. Think about that. The gradient is crazy. Mid-70s in South Florida, upper teens in North Florida. That's how crazy of an air mass we have working with our weather conditions right now. Just to put that into perspective. And that's exactly why I do think as we go over the next 7 to 10 days, I'm going to be airing this out on my social medias here later on this afternoon. I do think we're going to get one last storm system that could possibly bring some severe weather and some more snow out there. Not necessarily for us. We're done for now. We're probably, again, not going to see a snow instance like we did yesterday in quite a long time. Maybe not in our generation. Who knows? And if it does end up happening, we may want to investigate that CC word with which I'm not going to say it out loud. And then as we go through time, check out what happens down over the western half of the United States. See that? This is a very familiar pattern. We get a breakaway bubble of cold air that works its way through the Four Corners and emerges over the central plains after amplifying some and getting picked up by the jet. This is now next Thursday, January 30th, right before my birthday on February 1st. So I'm hoping this doesn't change the forecast for us here in Central Florida because that's going to be a big bummer. I am hoping for good weather because I'm doing a barbecue. So let's all cross our fingers that this can hang out. Models do tend to want to progress these cutoff systems a little too quickly. They want to make everything in the pattern at the low, mid to upper levels of your atmosphere like we're looking at here. They want to keep it moving. They all do the ridiculous mathematical equations that I could never memorize or try to perform on a regular basis myself. And as a result, it just keeps the train rolling, keeps it pushing. And a lot of the time, because these upper level features will break away from what steers them, they'll get stuck. They'll get hung up and they'll just kind of kick back for a while until the next big thing sweeps it out or golfs it up, tees it up, and then hits it out over the front range or the driving range. But that's what we're going to be watching. That, I think, is going to be our last shot at seeing wintry weather, regardless, across the United States, unless you're up in the uppermost Midwest near the Great Lakes in the Northeast. Typical of our La Nina pattern, you will naturally get some colder air in that general quadrant of the U.S. So going forward through time, if you look, this is all the way through to the weekend. Saturday morning, nothing out there. We are underneath a big bubble, no trouble, high pressure. You can see the high pressure is stationary. We get the telestrator, the pen out again. The high pressure's right there. Big old bubble of high pressure. Our H is planted over Atlanta, it looks like, and as a result, there is nothing going on. We are underneath that stable sinking air, and the eastern half of the country, almost to its entirety, is. Here comes a weak little area of low pressure, a low pressure lobe that's going to hang out over the Central Plains, and as we move through time, it tries to get a little something from it. That return flow on the west side of our high pressure, see where my arrow is drawn, driving warmth out of the Gulf. I'm not going to say any name right now because I know that's still up in the air per the executive order. The Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, Gulf of something. The Gulf is driving moisture out of that, which is very anomalously warm. Don't let me forget to pull that up for you all. I want to show you just how much the anomalies are cranking in the Gulf of Mexico right now. And then if we fast forward, I'll go very quickly because as you can see, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week, not a whole lot until finally by late in the day on Wednesday, there's that next system. And because we've been under modifying high pressure for a while, I do think this could be another classic setup for northern United States, maybe Midwestern snow, alongside a severe weather quadrant down here. We'll have to wait and see. It really depends on how much this high pressure down over the east and the southeast can modify and mix out and see if we have the ingredients and the dynamics in play for some possible thunderstorms, if not severe weather. It's a classic textbook setup, but we're also very long range at this point. We're looking over a week out, about 8 days from now. So obviously, there's going to be a lot of changes, and I can pull up the latest model data for you all here in a moment. But those are kind of the big headlines. We're going to take a quick little 2-minute break. I'll come back, and we'll break down what next week could look like, as well as take a quick glance at what the temperatures will look like for this weekend. And then finally, I'll unravel very briefly why it is I do think that after my birthday, early February, and through there, at least for the first couple weeks of February, will likely be a lot quieter and actually warmer. All right, so stick around. We will be right back. Welcome back, everybody. We are still here. Quick, very quick 2 minutes. They always go by super fast. Now, before we go any further with the actual meat and potatoes of what's happening in Florida, I'm just going to talk you through a bit of what's happening down the pike. So, if you look here, what we're looking at is going to be what's called a teleconnection chart, showing us what's called the Pacific North American Oscillation, or PNA for short. This plays a huge role in forecasting winter weather during the fall and winter, as well as potential tropical cyclone paths during the summer and the early fall. So don't be surprised if you're tuning into our daily web show and you hear PNA, NAO, and so on and so forth referenced year round, because it plays a pivotal role in forecasting a large majority of the big picture weather, as well as what's happening in your local area. And I don't have a pen tool here that we could use, so I'm going to go ahead and try to doodle it the best I can. If you look whereabouts, and let me see if I can take us full screen on this. Do I have a screen share? Here we go. All right. So if you look down at the bottom of the chart, where you can see the dates, we have the 26th, the 27th of January into the 28th. And then if you look back up at the line graph itself, notice that they cross the zero threshold, or the zero variable there in the center of the picture. Then we kind of do it again as we get closer to Friday the 31st and then Saturday, February 1st. We get that little speed bump before it starts to plummet even more as we go through the 2nd of February and even further on. What that means for us is we could possibly have some cold air working its way down. Whenever you're in a positive PNA, what that typically means is we have a ridge out to the west with warmth and a trough extending down over the eastern United States, providing us with cool. So every time you see it bump up and down like that, if it goes up, that's model data suggesting that we're going to have another cold outbreak, or at least a dose of relatively cooler air, I'll say, come down over the eastern half of the United States. The more it dips further down and down and down into a negative PNA, that refers to a building ridge of warmth, of higher pressure over the eastern United States and troughing back out west, which is likely why, if I refer us back to the Climate Prediction Center here, you can see that they are projecting through the 28th and out to the 1st, we will start to get back to normal, if not slightly above average, just slightly. And notice how the western United States now are starting to see the warmth creeping in. And that lines up perfectly with what our model here is thinking. If I switch over to the GFS ensemble, same thing. There goes that lovely speed bump right in the center of the chart, which I do think is going to be our next weather player, our next winter system we'll have to pay attention to across the south and central United States and into us here in Florida. But that's down the road. We don't have to worry too much about it right now. Let's just enjoy the cold, enjoy the snowfall if you got it, because it's going to be very quiet for the next week or so. Rain chances are going to go down. Unfortunately, our drought conditions will likely start to sneak back up, at least marginally. We did get a lot of rain yesterday, 1 to 2 inches on average, 3 in some very isolated spots. Again, Osceola County getting that 3.5 inches in the Kissimmee area where I grew up. But from there, as the ridge of high pressure builds in, you can see on the GFS as well, from about 2 February all the way through to the 7th, we're trending more and more into a negative PNA, which would suggest we're going to have ridging building in over the United States. Here's a look at some of the most recent model data. I'm watching it very closely as it comes in, and if you look, this lines up excellently with what we just saw on the chart. So let me pull you back to the GFS and look dead center of the screen there. You can see that there is a speed bump between the 28th and the 31st. You can see where the blue line goes above 0 towards the 1 mark. And then if you watch the GFS model here, this is January 28th, 29th, into the 30th, and then finally the 31st, we have another system building out there, and it gets its act going, it looks like, on this current model iteration by February 1st, and then there it is. It takes off. That actually looks like a classic severe weather setup. Let's take a look at the winds. Yep, there it is. There's your severe weather quadrant. Surface-based Cape is definitely getting pulled back into Mississippi, Alabama. The Florida Panhandle will have to watch. And granted, this is still a long ways out. This is 200-plus hours, 7, 8, 9 days in the future, so there are going to be adjustments, but Flipping back to this, you can more or less kind of make a generalized forecast that, okay, right around that time frame from the 28th through to the 1st, where that speed bump comes into the picture before we drop down, there could be something on the weather map that we'll have to pay attention to, bringing this negative, or I should say this positive pattern into play. And yeah, so there you have it. That looks pretty good. Pretty solid snow system. We'll have to see if this maintains itself. It starts at around 190 hours. Let's see if the Canadian model has it on there. Oh, wow. The Canadian model's only at 98 hours. Hang on a second. Let's go ahead and try it on here. Oh, Lord. The Canadian model's struggling to come in right now. We'll have to give it a little more time. The show will have concluded before this model comes in. Oh, well. Either way, though, you guys are understanding the big picture here. If I show you the European AI model, the Euro AI is thinking the same thing. There's the 29th. Here comes the 30th. And then the 31st, you see that next system beginning to take off. Moving a bit more towards the east, but same general picture. Again, general large-scale picture. We're not going to nail down impacts or start talking local phenomena for us here or anywhere else, because right now we're just watching for a storm on the big picture map. Now, real quick, let's get into some of our other pieces of the puzzle here. So, for example, I'll go ahead and switch us over. We're using a meteogram now. Let's go to downtown Orlando for us Central Floridians. Here's the Orlando airport. And you can see as we go through the weekend, by Saturday, 36 degrees out there starting the day. But then we're going to rapidly rebound. If you look on the 26th, we're already back into the 70s. And by the following Monday, the final week of January, we're already back into the low 70s with a bit of a drop-off by Tuesday of next week, because you notice that that weak system starts to, pause. You notice on the GFS earlier, there is a bit of a spin up that starts to form over the Gulf Coast and move rapidly off towards the east. Naturally, every time there's a bit of a spin in the atmosphere and there's cold air in play, it magnetizes it, picks it up, and starts it turning. And that's what probably steers it through us and why our temps drop about 5 to 7 degrees as we go from Monday afternoon to Tuesday afternoon. If you look here at the GFS deterministic, same thing. Look at that, 37 degrees, going to be our coldest day in a while this upcoming Saturday before we continue to warm up. And look at that extended range picture for early February. By the time we get to my birthday on Saturday, we are back in the 80s. And that tells me there could be some severe weather out there. If the models are thinking low 80s, upper 70s, with humidity back in the picture for the southeast, if that storm does develop and our models continue to pinpoint it, that tells me we're going to have the necessary ingredients to pop off some thunderstorm activity. So those are primarily your key takeaways here as we get ready to wrap up. We're going to be cold this weekend. We're probably not going to get another dose of snow for the rest of the winter. I hate to say it. If we do, then something bad's going to happen during the hurricane season. And I don't say that in a bad way. I just know that it's extremely rare to get the one. If we get two, then, oh boy, hold on to your butts. Which, by the way, it is the 22nd of January. Here within the next 7 days, as we get closer to the 1st of February and we get another round of climate data, I will be introducing you all to a very brief glance at what the Climo models are suggesting for things like El Nino, La Nina, what the United States could see during the spring and summertime, as well as a quick glance, a bit of a peek through the doorway or peek through the curtain at the 2025 hurricane season. Typically, I only do that stuff on my own personal YouTube channel, my own personal social media, because it's personal to me. And I enjoy theorizing and looking at all that stuff and kind of drawing hypotheses and doing some scientific research behind the scenes to kind of better educate myself on some of the things we look for forecasting pre-seasonal outlooks for the hurricane season. But that's the only plug I'm going to put in there for now. Beyond the temperatures that are going to sink as we go through this weekend, we are going to slowly but surely start to warm over the next 2 to 3 weeks, regardless of if that next system that could form by next Thursday plants itself on our charts. We are going to see the patterns flip. Cold air will stay out west, and as you saw with the GFS, we're going to start to return to form here in Central Florida. So thank you all so much for taking some time out of your Wednesday morning to join me here for our morning weather update. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time, same place, 11:30. If you are watching us over on the News 6 YouTube channel or you discover this live stream after the fact, after it has concluded, please consider clicking subscribe, liking this information, sharing it across any other digital platform that you feel comfortable doing so. And to our News 6 Plus viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. We're still ironing out the kinks on creating a chat room for you all so you can drop your questions, comments, and concerns during these daily weather updates. And that's about it. That's all we got. Some great stuff yesterday. I know that there was some damage to be had, unfortunately, because of the wintry weather and the high winds. But regardless, it's kind of nice that we get a bit of a late winter wonderland for northern Florida. So if you have the availability to do so and you're down here in central Florida, maybe take a quick spin up there. See what you can see. Looking at our cameras out there, it does look like we still do have a lot of the snowfall. And with these cold temps sticking out through the weekend, it may not be in a rush to fully melt off. So you have about another day or two before it's non-existent once again, and Florida looks very Florida. So thank you all once again. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Hump day. We're almost to the weekend. We are at that speed bump point before it's downhill from here. And we'll see you again very soon. But until then, this is the Digital Weather Center signing out.